Can the MLS become a bigger and better soccer league than the English Premier League? One MLS executive says yes, it can. So, Nelson Rodriguez, MLS Executive Vice President of Sporting and Competition, says, I would expect in 30 years' time for MLS to be the league of choice. When pressed, he confirmed that he meant better than the English Premier League. He added that MLS is improving every year and continues to benefit from having a full generation that has grown up with the league, thus providing renewable supply of fans. I believe that the infrastructure that exists, not just physical, is the start of a cultural shift that is required to become the league of choice, he said. Now, can this actually happen? Can the MLS not only keep improving, but can it come bigger than the English Premier League, which right now is the best and biggest league in the world, both in terms of revenue and spending, but also the quality of play on the pitch? My answer is maybe. 30 years is actually a fairly small time frame, but it's not impossible either, and it might even be probable. There's a bunch of it depends. Now, the biggest it depends is how big of a boost is the 2026 World Cup in the USA going to be for soccer's growth on the whole. If it's astronomical, it just causes a seismic cultural shift in the sporting world in the United States, the answer is yes. It will become bigger than the English Premier League in 30 years' time. However, if the cultural shift is much smaller than maybe some of the more optimistic people like myself think, then 30 years might be too small of a time frame for that to happen. Now, we all know the MLS has some distinct disadvantages when it comes to world soccer and the quality of the league. But according to the Opta Analyst, which is the most respected data analytics company for soccer in the world, the MLS is currently the 9th best league in the world by average team rating. And even when we only do the top 10 teams of every single league, the MLS is still in the top 10. And the reality is MLS is kind of at a mild disadvantage here for average ratings because there are 30 MLS teams to where most leagues have 20 or less teams. And those bottom 10 teams in MLS actually drag down the rating. So the fact that it's still top 10, even after that, only using the top 10, is a promising sign. Now, what really hurts MLS is the fact that it's far younger and soccer is just far less developed culturally in particular in the United States compared to the way it is in Europe, but also compared to our own American sports. But we've already shown that the MLS can in fact overcome these difficulties. And the reason is the MLS has in fact surpassed a lot of leagues in both Latin America and in Europe. It's bigger than most of the leagues in Latin America, with the exception of maybe Brazil, Mexico, and maybe Argentina. And in Europe, it's bigger than most of the leagues outside of the Big Five, with the exception of Portugal, Belgium, and maybe one or two other leagues. You can get in arguments of whether the MLS is better than the Eredivisie or not. I'm not actually concerned about that. However, it has surpassed dozens upon dozens of European leagues that have had huge head starts. Now, the question is, can it actually compete with the big American leagues of other sports? Now, the big leagues in American sports are the biggest and richest professional sports leagues in the entire world. So actually, the MLS catching up with them might actually be a bigger challenge than it will be to catch up with the big European professional soccer leagues. As we look at the top 10 richest leagues in the world, the top 5 are the National Football League, the Indian Premier League for cricket, Major League Baseball, the NBA, and then the English Premier League rounds out the top 5. So here's the thing. We're in closer touching distance to even the big European leagues than we actually are our own professional sports leagues. So cutting into that cultural gap is going to be difficult. However, there is some promise. According to polls, the youngest American demographics actually prefer soccer to both American football and baseball. They're about even when it comes to basketball. So there seems to be a generational shift away from football and baseball to some degree in favor of both soccer and basketball. And those same Americans say that their favorite league for soccer is the MLS, not the English Premier League or other top European soccer leagues. So I wanted to round this out by showing the next 5 leagues in the top 10 in the world. You'll notice something. The National Hockey League is in 6th. Then we have La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, and the UEFA Champions League. So even one of the smaller of the big 4 professional sports leagues in America is still bigger than most of the big pro soccer leagues in Europe, at least when it comes to revenue. When we look at the revenue, it's $5.5 billion. That's in touching distance of the English Premier League. So it tells you something about American sports and how much money there is in it. And that, in my opinion, actually spells good for MLS and American soccer. Because if that cultural shift happens, that money will be going to MLS and not the smaller professional sports leagues like the NHL. Now, the NHL has 2 distinct advantages over MLS currently. Number 1, it's a much older and more established league. The MLS started its first season in 1996, so it's actually only 29 years old as of now. NHL is far, far older than that. The second advantage they have is the NHL can claim that it is the best professional hockey league in the entire world. The MLS cannot currently claim that, but maybe in 30 years' time, it can. Now, there's a variety of other reasons why I think the MLS can actually achieve this, and at bare minimum, I think it will very likely be a top 2 to 3 league in the world in that time frame. And one of the reasons is that American cultural and lifestyle is very, very attractive to players. So if the teams can compensate them with either competitive or better wages than they can in Europe, players will want to come here. This is not the same as Saudi Arabia or the Chinese Super League, where you're going to a dictatorship with highly cultural conservative lifestyles that just aren't favorable to most people. There's a reason Lionel Messi chose Inter Miami over Saudi League teams that were going to offer him basically a blank check. Living in Miami, cool, great for his family. Living in Riyadh, not so much. But a lot of people are going to just disagree with this, and they're not going to even consider it a possibility, mostly because they don't want American soccer, or MLS in particular, to be successful. But here's the thing. It's probably going to happen. Now, the question is, how high can it go? Could it possibly plateau as only a top 5 league in the world? Yeah, that's possible. It's totally possible that it gets there and it finds a niche there, but it doesn't grow beyond that point. Could it possibly grow way bigger than the English Premier League? Maybe even start to be competitive with the NFL here in America? Yes, that's also possible. And my personal opinion is this. If you truly think soccer is the best sport in the world, it's better than baseball, it's better than basketball, it's better than football, it is the best sport in the world. When it actually gets its chance and Americans just accept it, start watching it, then it will eventually overtake our traditional American sports as well. And America being the sporting capital of the world for basically every sport except for soccer, rugby and cricket really too, it will become the biggest league in the world, and it will be bigger than anything we have seen in Europe so far. But guys, tell me what you think in the comments below. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Tell me if you think I'm correct. Tell me if you think I'm just a dumb idiot spouting nonsense. In fact, I expect several comments saying exactly that. I don't care. Let me know what you think in the comments below.